Throughout cinematic history, vampires and werewolves have frequently crossed paths on the silver screen in a battle for dominance. Today, we've handpicked a werewolf and vampire film, pitting them against each other in an epic double feature showdown. Join us as we delve into these mesmerizing creature features to determine which genre reigns supreme. Welcome to this episode of Cursed Beings.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to another episode of Cursed Beings Double Feature Showdown with my co-host Albie from Blood and Brew. I feel like I say this every time. It feels like it's been forever since we recorded last. But this time I think it has been. Maybe this time and last time. But that's okay, because we got some interesting ones, I think, together this time.
Agreed.
Albert's getting really good at challenging me with these movie choices. So if you're not familiar, it's a show where one of us picks a werewolf, the other one picks a vampire movie, and we put them head to head to see which one reigns supreme. Albert got to pick the werewolf movie last time, so it was my turn to pick. We have this little thing that Albert made for us. These are kind of just like our talking points as we go through the movies, and you know, all the things that we liked or didn't like about them. These are both good ones. This should be a good conversation. So my werewolf pick was the 2000 movie Ginger Snaps. Let me see if I can sound like Albert. With a running time of 1 hour and 48 minutes. It's directed by John Fawcett. It stars Catherine Isabel and Emily Perkins. They play the two main characters. Two death-obsessed sisters, outcast in their suburban neighborhood, must deal with the tragic consequences when one of them is bitten by a deadly werewolf.
It's pretty spooky. Pretty spooky.
It's such a what do you call it? Like a coming of age movie. I feel like because it's got so many like things. Oh, I like that one. I haven't seen the cover like that. There's the other one where they're like up close, and it's like just the two, like this one. This is the one I'm used to. If it'll come up. It's got like a blue. Damn it! It's got like a blue background.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but yours is cooler.
Thank you.
You know, yeah. So I love this movie. That's why I picked it. It was on my list when we first decided we were going to do the show. This was like one of the first ones I wrote down to eventually get to because it's one of my favorites. I've seen it like a million times.
All right. I agree. I it's in a lot of people's top 5, I've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did it in my top 5 too. If it's not in my top 5, it's definitely in my top 10. But my werewolf list always pisses everybody off, so I don't even try anymore, you know?
All right. Well, my movie choice was Let the Right One In. I was trying to think of a film that, because she picked first, so I had to pick one that was going to be equal. Like I was thinking kids, school, bullies, and this seemed to kind of fit. It was what came out in 2008. It's a rated R horror romance film running 1 hour and 54 minutes. Directed by Thomas Alfredson.
I got to change my tone. 47 minutes. I got to.
All right. And then you just gave the quick little plot too, right? So I'll give that. This was based on a 2004 novel of the same title by John, I'm going to screw this name up, Ajivide Livinvisks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's
Hopefully
pretty close.
We can post that on the screen later so that people can see how tough that was for me to read. Who also wrote the screenplay. The film tells the story of a bullied 12-year-old boy who develops a friendship with a strange child in Blackenberg, a suburb of Stockholm in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
So
I thought I was older than that for some reason. I mean, not that 2008 was like yesterday, right? But
it does feel like a little bit more.
Yeah. It's
Dated.
probably because it's a foreign film, though. Like, but it definitely doesn't feel like a 2000s movie for sure.
I remember enjoying it a lot more this time than I remembered liking it in the past. So I don't know what that was about.
I think I felt the opposite.
Yeah.
I think I still like it. I think I enjoyed it more before this rewatch, but I don't know really why. I mean, we'll get into some of the things, I'm sure, but like it just was one of those, like, I kind of was like, oh, watch a movie. And I was like, oh yeah, there's like thinking of specific scenes that I know I love, and then was like, all right, eventually it's going to get to that scene. And I just felt it was just a little bit, a little more dull for me than I remembered it being, but it's still really, really well done.
See, that's the opposite I felt. I was like thinking, man, I remember this film being kind of like boring and wouldn't really like it and kind of drawn out. But then this time when I watched it, I was trying to actually pay attention more. And I was like, wait a second, maybe it wasn't as much as so. That's funny how we both have two opposites.
It's like opposite. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Are we going to get into the cast of Ginger Snaps? Because I think Catherine Isabel's been in a lot of stuff, right? I mean, I started going down her IMDb thing.
A lot.
Right?
Yep.
Not talking about all the Ginger Snaps because I want to say there's
multiples, yeah.
Yeah, at least there's 4 or 5 of them, I think.
Is there that many?
Maybe there's only 3.
I think I only thought there was like 2, maybe 3. Yeah, I think like more recently she's the aunt in It's a Wonderful Knife, and she played Vera, which is one of my favorite characters, in a Netflix canceled show called The Order. She played a witch in that. She was fantastic in that. I loved her character so much. But yeah, she's been in a ton of stuff.
And then also Emily Perkins has been in a lot too. The Bridget in the film.
Bridget, yeah.
So, but I didn't remember her as much. Obviously, she's not as standoutish, I guess.
Yeah.
You got Chris Lynch as Sam, which I don't know if I pronounced that correctly at all. Mimi Rogers as the mother, Pamela. I thought she did a really good job. I mean, I recognize her from so many movies. I couldn't even like name the movies, but I just know she's been
in other stuff.
Movies, and she's just a really good actress to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's she's quirky in this though.
Yes,
like comedic,
mm-hmm.
Which fits the rest of the tone, I think, really well. But yeah, no, she's great.
All right. The cast of Let the Right One In, I didn't know any of these people. They're not familiar to me.
Nope.
Me Lena Leanderson as Ellie, Care Hedelbrant as Oscar, Per Ragnar as Hakan. How do you pronounce an A when it has a little circle over the top of it? Because that's how this is written.
I don't
know. And
I have no idea.
Yeah. So those are the main actors in the film that it focuses on. I wasn't going to go into all the other side actors. But yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who any of them are. I think the people they cast in the remake are way more famous to me.
Mm-hmm.
Than the originals. But again, probably because it's a foreign film, and if they've done things that are not horror, I'm not going to know who they are.
what did you feel about the remake? Did you like it more or less than the original?
I liked it less than the original. I love Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's phenomenal. I loved her as Carrie. Oh my God. But I think it's hard to like put into words, but I feel like thematically when you're talking about these types of things with 12-year-olds, I think there's a very delicate balance to handle like a storyteller, for at least me being in my 30s. Like it has to balance being the content that it is, but still not like cringy. And I think that the remake felt way more cringy for some reason. I don't know if it's because they took out some of the excess stuff. I don't know if it's just because of the way the lines were written just a little bit different. I don't know. But the scenes with them that are more coupley, like the scene in particular where like she gets in the bed with him, it's like I was like not in a fun way grossed out. Like I was like, oh, I don't like the way they did this. It wasn't handled very well.
Like they overly sexualized it?
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's more neutral in the original. It's more like even Steven, whereas this felt hypersexualized. And it's like you're talking about 12-year-olds. Like, exactly. I don't know. Like as somebody, like I said, as a grown-up, we have a 12-year-old. Like it was just like I don't know.
Very off-putting for sure. Yeah.
It was. And not in a fun horror way, right? Like more in just this is not super good.
This isn't okay.
Yeah. But for some reason, I didn't feel that way about the original. I think the original handles those themes much better. And I don't know if it's because they just were more careful about towing the line for it. I don't know. I do know the book is way worse. Okay. I haven't read it. But we covered the remake on remakes, and Scott, my co-host for that, was telling me about the book because he's read it, and he was telling me all this stuff, and I was like, dang, I was like, it's way worse in the book. And he was like, yeah, because in the book, the guy that's caring for her is in the book is actually a pedophile.
Oh.
And the reason that the motivation, I guess, for the reason that he helps her is because she tells him that if he helps her, she will, and so it's much darker, much more twisted version of that. But I think the original handles that stuff very, very well in a way that isn't, I need to turn this off, kind of off-putting. Whereas the remake just was like, ugh, it made you feel gross for watching it,
Okay. Switching back to ginger snaps.
Yep.
I feel like we should, if you're going to check this film out, there should be a little bit of a sensitivity warning thrown out there based off of what we're saying, like, hey, go check it out. Because right in the first like scene, right, we're seeing some people are really, really protective over animals. And I get it. I completely 100%.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit in your face in this one. And I didn't remember it being so like, wow, like, hey.
Yeah, it's it can be, I think, triggering for some people and I'm an animal lover, but I mean, I have my limits with it, obviously, but yeah, no, it is.
For me, I think it's a little bit more of a disconnect because I know what I'm seeing isn't an actual.
Sure.
Girl. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I saw an actual pet being harmed or tortured or whatnot, yeah, I'd be pissed instantly, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
But because I know that, okay, this is a movie,
then you can just kind of
connect myself a little bit. But still, right out the gate,
it's a lot.
Right?
It's a lot.
That and then the self unaliving, I guess we could say.
Yep.
And
like their pictures and stuff.
Yeah, the video
the video.
That's like the beginning, right, of the movie too. They're in class showing this video that they made at home, and that's pretty in your face as well. It's like,
yeah, it is. A couple of trigger warnings on that: the animals and the self-harm stuff. I think It's kind, you know what it's kind of making me think of like talking about it is you know how we talked about when we covered Bad Moon, how like Bad Moon started out like just insane. Like the first couple minutes of it are just really wild. And then it kind of like calms down a lot as it goes on. It's like just really starts out in a kind of crazy way. It's just hopefully, I guess, set the tone for the story, but
it leads you it makes you think you're going into like an action werewolf film in the beginning. And that's how, like, that would have been kind of cool to see that, but like that's not what it was. It's not
what this is, no.
No. So with that being said, on the gore scale, since we're talking about gore, stuff in your face, bloodiness, what are you rating this?
Ginger snaps first?
Yes.
Let's say
Hold on.
Savage.
Winter out. You're gonna go with Savage. I was gonna go with Bloody, but yeah, I could see where you would say Savage would be.
It's not as much as you would expect in a werewolf movie, right? I think.
Yeah.
But still enough to be a noticeable component to the experience, right? Well,
I feel like when we do have the savagery or whatnot, it's always a cutaway. It's never, you're never watching something be ripped apart or sinew and muscle and
it's like quick
blood
shots
spraying. It's more like after the fact that you're seeing these things, which is still bad. But I think a part of the gore for me is watching the
watch it happen.
Oh God. Anyways, yeah, right. It always brings me back to the 2013 Evil Dead when I talk about gore and just the way they took their time with it, and you could almost feel it. So that's what I'm trying to say. That would be like a Grizzly or Slaughterhouse up here, or we're talking that once The Sadness, that subtitled movie, that would be like a Slaughterhouse up here.
That one's like,
so if anybody's wondering how we like judge these, that's where we're at here.
Because The Sadness is rough.
Yeah, that we almost had to come up with a different
it's its own category of gore. Yeah,
that's a whole nother level. All right, so for Let the Right One In, again, there was a lot of parts in this film that I had forgotten about and that I didn't remember. Now, I wouldn't say that it was necessarily super bloody, but it is kind of graphic. There was at least several scenes where she like broke some guy's head back the wrong direction, or she drops her familiar from a window and his body bounces off of that bounce off of the door walkway covering, whatever you want to call it. That was I don't know, it's a little bit jarring. It just makes that little bit more like, oh shit, like this is actually this has just happened. So what would you score the Let the Right One In?
I would say, I'm trying to think of the scenes in my head.
I like how
I would say like Bloody and a half.
Bloody and a half.
Yeah. Okay. Because it doesn't I don't think it shies away from anything. What you see makes it like what you see is what makes sense for what is happening in the story. Like when she jumps on the people, it's like nighttime and it's dark and it's this very quick moment of, there's no need for it to have much more than what is given to you, right? The pool scene, obviously, that's a great one. And then, of course, you just mentioned, like what you were saying about the scene with the familiar. So yeah, I would say Bloody and a half. Where did you put this one?
I would probably say Bloody. Okay. I wouldn't go bloodthirsty. It's weird because you're talking about a vampire movie, right?
Yeah.
But then the familiar's taking people out into the woods and slitting their throat and then letting them drain into a bucket. Spoilers, by the way, if you haven't seen this.
Yes, when we do our shows, we We spoil everything.
Everything's spoiled.
Everything.
So yeah, I would go probably bloody, but
Okay.
I do feel like the gore is a little bit heavier in Ginger Snaps than it is in Let the Right One In, for sure. Like 100%.
Yeah, because sometimes the gore in Let the Right One In is just her mouth and her clothes have blood on them.
Exactly.
Or you see the bite mark, right?
Yeah.
Or there's like blood in the snow, right? But it's usually, there's only a couple of scenes where you get it, a little bit more, or you have a little bit more going on. So yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Ginger Snaps, the scare factor. Were there any parts of this that made you feel like wow, that was kind of scary, creepy, caught you off guard?
Yeah. I know it's really early in the movie, but the scene when Ginger gets attacked, I think is probably the creepiest. There's something different, I feel like, when you've spent, most of the movie getting used to a character or whatever. Like when they turn, it's like a little bit less scary than the unknown that is a monster already. There's something more like unsettling about that. Like, cause we were like, who is this monster and what's the deal? And it like, they're walking through like the playground, and it's very like, ugh, like I thought that was kind of intense. But other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else in particular. I thought it was a little creepy when we start getting her pieces of transformation. It's kind of like the way, because they kind of give it to you in like waves a little bit. Like you get like, so, which they don't always, yeah, like they don't always do that. Like sometimes you just don't see anything, or sometimes it's super long, drawn out, step for step process. But this is kind of like in spurts of her changing into, becoming a werewolf completely. And so there's parts of that, and then like added, I think, to some of the things that she says once she's gotten to a certain point in the process, I think was really like unsettling. But I think the biggest scene, that as far as like having a creep or a scare factor, I think it's when they're being hunted in the playground. I think that's probably the creepiest to me.
I agree with that. That was the one that stood out to me too, was the playground scene, but not when it's when her sister's left there alone in the park looking at the tree line, and she can't see a damn thing, and you can only hear the scream in the far off distance. And that part is the part that gave me a little bit of like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Oh fuck. Like that was the thing that like hit me a little bit. So I agree with you there. That was the one part that did it for me too.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for having characters with these types of relationships. Like I really love when they do siblings or friendships as opposed to like love interest stuff. And so when you have these two siblings, and they end up having their differences, obviously, but they seem very close. You get this kind of, and you get used to their little dynamic pretty quickly, I feel. And then to be in Bridget's shoes, right, and to know that noise, that scream that you're hearing belongs to like the person that you love, and so I think that adds to that whole like feeling of dread and like worry and fear, because she's fine, but her sister is not. And I think like kind of watching her facial expressions, like you said, as she's trying to search and figure it out, and all you hear is the noise in the background. I think it's really smart, I think, to tell a story like this with siblings, especially because they were so close already. So yeah, I think that just kind of adds to it.
All right. The scare factor in Let the Right One In. This one was a little bit harder for me. So
yeah, because I think the scenes that I would want to reference as far as like the scenes I didn't necessarily find them creepy. It was more just like honestly, even though I do like the original more, I think the remake handled some of those like scary scenes better because like, and you know, like not super big fans of CGI, but you know, in the remake, they've got Chloe Grace Moretz CGI crawling all over these. That's unsettling though. Like it is CGI, it's not super well done, but the concept of something moving that fast while it's attacking you made the scene where she jumps in the guy in the alley scarier than the one in the original. Because in the original, she just jumps on him like a normal, like my son jumps on me like that, you know, like it didn't feel very otherworldly, it didn't feel supernatural, whatever. And so and then the other sequence in particular that I think of is the scene when Oscar cuts his hand and she licks the blood off the floor. In the remake, they have her change and she's like feral. In the original, she's just kind of like, she's a little bit of a look going on and that little bit of that growling sound in her chest, but it just really wasn't as intimidating as it was to me in the remake. And then the other scene that I always think of when I think of the like, oh, is the pool scene with the bullies. Because that's like, I'm not scared of her. I'm happy for him that this is happening, if I'm honest, because they were the worst. But like that, you know, that first second when you see the sneakers go by in the water, and then the hand that's holding him just lets go and falls down, and you're like, oh, you know. But yeah, I think it's hard for me to say if it was like creepy or scary in particular, because I don't think that's the atmosphere it had. The atmosphere is more just dreary and sad and lonely and isolated. It didn't really feel scary or intense, you know?
I agree with you. I feel like it's more, they try to build it up more in your mind. You have to come up with what is she actually capable of instead of actually showing you. So yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah. I think I think it's got some really cool sequences that I think work really well, but I think that overall I just didn't find them to be like exceptionally creepy or scary.
No, I agree. There's several that should have been, but they didn't really push the creep factor all that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what did you think about the creature design in Ginger Snaps?
What is that laugh for?
I'm excited to hear your opinion.
Why? Because are you thinking we're going to disagree?
Possibly, just I don't know. I'm putting almonds that are seasoned spicily on top of my popcorn.
On your popcorn?
If anybody's curious, just so I have a blend of either.
But they're spicy?
Yeah, I think they're the elote. The elote almonds from, I forget what the brand is, Blue Diamond or something makes them.
Oh yeah.
Super good. Anyway.
Chili lime.
I just got corrected.
I think your room is haunted.
It is.
You just hear whispered chili lime.
Sometimes this lighting hits perfect, and then other times I'm like, oh.
It's because I think it's auto adjusting. I think.
I'm like trying to get the right lighting on my head. I think it hits.
When you get it, you just gotta. You can't move anymore. You gotta just stay.
You're just gonna think the screen froze.
We'll have to do like a blink twice if you. Okay, wolf design or creature design, right? That's what we're on. I don't hate this one. It's very
if you like wet rats,
it's huge, like I was gonna say it's like
that's the only thing that kind of bothered me about it, was just like, man, that just looks like a huge wet rat. And I want to be afraid of it. I really want, like, this is held in such high regard for so many people. So it's like I want to be one of those people, right? I want to be like, but I don't know.
It's very leathery. It's not very fuzzy. I think that they could have really benefited here from adding fuzz.
True.
Because I think like structurally, the face, the way the mouth looks, the eyes, the ears, solid. No complaints there. But it needs more fur if it's going to be a werewolf. Like when I think werewolf, I think super
Hair.
fuzzy, right? Like got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And this doesn't really have a lot of that. It does. I mean, it has some, obviously. But yeah, it's very wet looking, very leathery, not super it's definitely better than some of the other ones we've seen. But
Agreed.
it's not, an American Werewolf in London, right? Like we're not going to get it's very different. Or even like Howling, or God, even Bad Moon. Like I really like, I know you weren't, I don't think you were as big a fan. Not Bad Moon. What's the other one? Late Phases, where he's at the retirement home.
Oh, the alien werewolves. Yeah.
Those are sub genres. Aliens, wet rats.
Right.
But I think they could have benefited from a use of more hair, which seems like such a duh thing, like a simple thing. But I have no idea what the budget for this movie was in 2000. So I don't know. Maybe fur is expensive.
I'm all for the elongated werewolf face, but for some reason, maybe it was the posture because it was on all fours and face forward.
Yeah.
It made the whole head seem way longer than it should have been. And for me, that's when they should have like brought it in a little bit. Just to me, I don't like a werewolf with a huge beak. But I get it, right? I get what we're trying to go for. We're trying to go for like a wolf thing. This came across rubbery, sweaty, slimy. So yeah. What would it I'm trying to be honest here.
Honesty is the best. No, it's totally fine. We don't always agree. Like we're not always exactly on the same page. But no, I didn't mind this one. I think and it's not always the case with werewolf movies, because obviously if we're watching a werewolf movie, we're watching a werewolf movie for the werewolf. So the werewolf has to be strong if it's the focal point of the story. And this is going to sound like a reach, and you may raise your eyebrow at me, but it's a chance I'm willing to take. The only thing that I kind of would do to justify it is that she is an
it's hard to hold that for that long.
You're just waiting on the moment.
Finally.
Is that she is a budding werewolf. She is an adolescent werewolf. Maybe she hasn't come into her fur yet. That's all I got.
True. Okay.
But it kind of, when there's not fur to cover up the other stuff, then you start nitpicking, right? Because you can see more. You can see like the way that it's moving. You can see that a lot more clearly when there's no fur on it. So there's things like that I think in like movement, like the way that she's kind of hunched over, like what you were talking about on all fours, those things become a little bit weaker because there's nothing to conceal any of those imperfections, Okay.
How did you react when the sister reaches over and she sees her sleeping? We're talking about Bridget reaches over to Ginger. And then pulls her underwear down to expose a little baby tail, and it's wiggling. What was your initial reaction to that?
Listen.
No.
Don't be trying to tear apart my werewolf movie. So the biggest thing, I think, that if people are watching this and they have not seen Ginger Snaps is camp. It's very campy. It's not meant to be this super serious, over the top, heavy, dark werewolf movie. And so there's moments in these like super tense moments throughout the movie, whether it's emotional intensity or whatever, where they break it up with really silly things. Like there are these, like there's this one, I think there's like this one scene where they're like freaking out and they're arguing about stuff and they're trying to hide the blood and all the stuff from their mom. But then when their mom comes in, it's like this very lighthearted, silly scene. And so it went from being, and they do that multiple times throughout the film. And this is one of those moments because when she goes in, you're not really sure where it's going as far as like, what are we about to see? Where is this going to go? And then that happens and you're kind of like, yeah, well, all right. Wasn't prepared for that. So it's like, I think my first reaction, I probably laughed because I thought it was ridiculous, but I think the good thing is that I don't think that the silliness really comes out of left field. Like you pretty much know from the beginning of the movie that it's going to have some of those more campy elements. So were you just done at that point where you're like, why am I watching this?
I saw that. And I remember that from last time I was like, oh shit. Goddamn, it like got me again. I was like, those fuckers. No. I said, I did one of those ones. Like, I don't know. I like camp, but to a certain extent, it takes me out a little bit of the film.
Okay.
So that's
fair.
I do love a good campy film. So
yeah,
it wasn't, to me, it wasn't super horrible. It just kind of was like, come on.
Because you weren't expecting, you were like, what the hell? Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit.
I'm going to be honest. I've seen that movie a bunch of times. I did not rewatch it for the conversation because I have seen it so many times. I kind of hadn't even thought about that scene until you brought it up. Maybe I blacked it out.
I blacked it out.
I'm focusing on the other stuff. I forgot about that scene.
So the creature design in Let the Right One In. I don't feel like there really was anything. They didn't do much. There were a couple times when they tried to show that she's an older person in a younger body where she's trying to have the boy see through her eyes or whatnot. And you almost see like her as older. And then the other time with the blood where she's licking it up off the ground.
She looks just a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was just, and to me, there was no real creature design going on there. So that was kind of a letdown. I would have liked to see even a little bit of fangage. You know what I mean?
None. Or longer extended nails, maybe.
Right? No, yeah, exactly.
Just something, because the other thing is like we get like she's got a little bit of the speed. We know that she has a little bit of the strength because she's a vampire, but she's also a 12-year-old in a 12-year-old's body, right? So there has to be something more. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying about it not being very scary because she's just a 12-year-old girl. Like,
there is something I forgot though. In the beginning, the eyes, her
eyes,
the
contacts.
Yeah, they go from like almost cat eye looking to like big, regular,
right? Or more circular, I guess.
They looked almost like a cat eye. I was trying to like watch it like, it switched from dark to light, and it like went from cat eye to like a regular eye.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it was so minuscule, and it's like, just give me. I think with vampire movies, when they do this, they try to make it more real, I guess. It feels like we just
vampire movies for real, right?
We need something a little bit. Give us a little bit of something, give us some. I don't know. I would have even liked red glowing eyes or something like crazy. Yeah. Like, let's make it. I don't know. So yeah, I was a little bit let down there. I feel like the creature design, they didn't do really anything.
No, it's very simple, or kind of not really a thing at all, honestly. But yeah, no, I agree with that.
And going on to the transformation again, there wasn't a transformation. If we did any, it would be the woman that she bit that ends up in the hospital. She kind of goes through a transitioning period. Right. And she's not understanding why she can't go out in the sunlight anymore.
And she's like thrashing and acting crazy. And she gets attacked by the CGI cats.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So you caught the CGI cats. I was going to wait till the effects section, but yeah, dude, I was like, I don't remember there being CGI in here. Okay.
I didn't.
Those cats hit me crazy because they all start looking at the screen, like breaking the fourth wall. And you're like, wait a second. Are those motherfuckers looking at me? I love cats. All these CGI cats are all turning and like, so
they do. They look like those those edited videos of like cats dancing where they just look like super cartoony and like weird. Yeah, it was strange. I didn't remember that either. And like the first one you see, I was like, and then but then you see like a bunch of them, and then it gets real obvious when that orange one bites her on the leg, and then you're just like, oh Lord. Just like,
even with that being said, though, I feel like they did a really good job on that CGI because
it's not the word. No, it's it's fine. I think it worked fine for the scene. It's very short anyway. It's not.
I feel like I had to question it, and that's why I say that. Is like I was like, is that it is like usually you see CGI and you're like, oh shit, they fucking see that assholes. Why couldn't
it's practical? Not, but I think when she was throwing them, they were stuffed. Like I don't think they were. Obviously, they weren't real cats because it's 2008. We have things that protect animals in films, but they weren't CGI. They look like stuffed animals being thrown. And it was a very strange transition from real cats, right, to CGI cartoon cats, and then to these like stuffed animals that are just being thrown across the room.
It definitely wasn't the Reanimator scene with the cat that gets thrown against the wall. Every time I think of a cat being thrown, I picture that scene, and it makes me laugh, even though it's horrible.
Oh my god, the cat thing is funny. Well, and I think like whenever they do these cat attack scenes in movies, they're always, to me, they always look silly. They just always do, because like there was the Stephen King one. It's not called Cat People. What's it called?
It's
the
called
Sleepwalkers.
I own it. Oh yeah, okay. I was like, I can't think of it, and it's on my shelf.
There's like a scene like that in that one where all these cats like jump on the mom, and it's like it's just utter chaos when they do those scenes, and I'm just like, I can't even imagine. But yeah, there's like the CGI cats, and then when she's throwing them, they're like stuffed animals.
Well, okay, going back to Ginger Snaps, the transformation scene in this one. Opinion. We kind of touched on it a little bit about how it was like broken up into like long periods instead of being a compacted thing. But
I do wonder if it's just budgetary restrictions though, right? Because it's kind of the old Wolfman approach, right? Where you like hold the camera up on something and then you're like, and it's different, and it's kind of like that where you get these little pieces throughout the film, like as she's getting closer to this full form of wolfage. So that's always a little disappointing to me because, and we talk about, I know we beat this into the ground all the time, but when you get close up, extended well lit scenes like An American Werewolf in London of transformations in the 80s. When you look at a movie made in 2000, this was made in 2000.
Yes.
You are sort of confused as to why can't we replicate that, right? If not the exact same way, obviously, but if they could do it then, you could do it now. And it was all practical. So I don't know if it was like a budgetary choice to be like, oh, we'll do it in like chunks and then we can do the makeup really fast and we don't have to worry about concealing anything. So that's always a little bit of a disappointment when you don't get to see like the full-fledged craziness of a transformation, especially when you're talking about practical effects. You get the transformation in like the 2010 Wolfman, but it's a CGI practical hybrid. So it's not the same thing. It's not the same experience. Other than that, I mean, it seems to really just be more focused on who she was before. And then when she's the full wet rat, I believe, as it were. And so, which is fine. I mean, I think it didn't ruin anything for me, but it's definitely not the highlight of the film, I don't think.
So I'm going to go ahead and say the part in the van.
Yeah.
Where they're actually showing it's not looking like a girl anymore. It's looking more like a creature. Yeah. I kind of wish they would have shown that a little bit more.
Short-lived.
But yeah, it was not lit well. It was dark. It was like a lot of stuff happening, so you couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
And yeah, towards the end, I remember seeing her, like, it was in her final, like, wolf girl stage where she had, it looked like almost like, right, like a layer of makeup or a mask of some sort on her face. To me,
Gills.
to me, I don't know. Again, to what you were saying about budget, it kind of feels like that might be a huge thing that played a factor here.
Yeah, they weren't able to maybe do. It feels like for their wolf idea, it might have been high concept and they just couldn't quite execute it, which it's one of those things is like, we like, especially with monster movies of any kind, werewolf or not, you know, sometimes less is more when you don't have the budget to flesh it out, pun not intended, the way that you want, you know. I mean, Wolf of Snow Hollow is just a suit, and they made it work, like, they with camera angles and lighting, and so, you know, there's techniques that make things look better, but you have to spend the time that it's on camera and you have to utilize that to the best that you can. And it's, yeah, it's rough because, I mean, I think I still don't think it's probably the worst, but it's such a hard thing to judge because we do have such great examples of it in a time when you didn't have the same resources. So it's just kind of like, you know.
Wolf of Snow Hollow had some good scenes in it that made you feel like it was an actual werewolf, though, not a guy in a suit. If we're gonna go ahead and ruin that movie for people, that's what was crazy about that film.
Because you don't know as a viewer that it's not real until the end.
Right.
And then you're literally like, I don't know if you were like this, but I just watched this for the first time like a year ago. But I was like, I was watching it and it gets to the point where he goes to the house where the guy lives, and the guy goes outside and you realize it's like a suit,
super tall, and it's weird and awkward.
And he was one of the first people they interviewed when there was issues. And you're just like, you have got to be fucking kidding me right now. Like, it wasn't real, but that scene when it comes around the car and there's that, I think it's I can't remember who it is, but and it's dark and there's just the light of the car. Like that scene where it stands all the way, that was so good. And it was just a werewolf suit.
And her arms, her arms cut off or something.
Oh God, it was so good. So good. I was mad that it wasn't a real werewolf because I always want real werewolves, but you got to give, you know, credit where it's due, because I was convinced.
Well, my point is, like, you could make a movie. You could make that movie, though.
No, and that's exactly it. Like, it's really just picking and choosing the moments to show what you have in your hand versus trying to stretch it into too many scenes where you really, you know, you can't rise to that challenge or whatever.
Because that didn't look like a super high budget film either to me.
No, it wasn't. It was super small budget. It was like an indie director.
So yeah, that's my point, is like, man, if we would have just put the money in the right slots, maybe. All right. Practical effects and or CGI in Ginger Snaps. Now, I know the director specifically asked for it to be all practical effects, correct?
Yeah. As far as I know.
How do you feel about the practical effects throughout the film?
I mean, without like repeating too much regarding the transformation, I think it works. I think that it's fine. I don't think there's, I'm not, you know, and I know I say this about a lot of movies we talk about, I'm not walking away thinking about the practical effects. Honestly, it's really the story for me that makes me love this movie so much. But I think that there are parts that they did really well with. And, you know, you get that crazy scene where she's got, you know, her teeth are changing and she's got the blood all over her mouth and her eyes are different. And there's these very simple things like that worked really well. And I didn't mind the werewolf design. You know, I think there was obvious room for improvement, but I didn't mind it. I think that wasn't horrible. I think the biggest weakness is maybe trying to do too many practical effects scenes when you really just didn't quite have maybe the budget or time to do it, because there's, you know, using lighting is important, but if you make things dark just to conceal, it becomes a little too obvious that that's what you're doing, I think. And so then it's like, we don't even know what we're looking at. And that can be frustrating when you're talking about a monster movie, We want to see the monster. That's why we're here, right? And so, yeah, I'd say probably like pretty low middle ground as far as that goes, because the really basic stuff like the fake blood and some of that stuff looked very realistic. I had no problems with that. But when you start getting into the kind of the bread and butter of it, it was a little weak, because I think it feels like they just didn't have the money for it.
For me, a lot of the like gore effects seem to be pulled off pretty well.
Yeah.
That's just for me. I love the way that, and again,
yeah,
it has nothing to do with the fact that this was a dog, but the scene when you're first seeing that
oh yes,
bloody doghouse and the dog that's like ripped up, and it's like the camera's slowly going over the dog and then going to the doghouse and showing the clawed up doghouse door and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That to me gave me the chills. Like it like kind of gave
a
me
lot.
that, like,
yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
that's like the intro scene to this film. So it was like,
yeah,
I think that they did. I think that the practical effects were pretty good. Even the tail scene, it looked viable, even though it was, it was campy. It still was shit. That is how it would probably look to me. And you know what I mean? If so it didn't throw me off in that way.
Yeah.
As far as, oh, that looks like you could see this, the whatever, you could like, it looked clean.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the things that like I was looking at like that, and I thought a lot of their gore practical effect type of stuff like that looked pretty clean. So
yeah.
Okay, switching over to Let the Right One In, the practical effects, CGI. We both talked about the cats being ridiculous and having almost human-like expression faces as they all look at the screen. But
yes,
what about other parts of the film?
I think the practical effects on this are pretty good. I mean, it's still pretty minimalistic, I think, for the most part. But when they're slashing throats, it feels like they're slashing throats. When that hand disconnects from holding him underwater and floats, that looked very realistic to me. Which also goes to however they weighted it, making it look naturally as it like fell. I thought that was really good. Yeah. There's also that other section in the pool scene where you see the blood of whatever come like it just kind of like falls into the water. I thought stuff like that was done really well.
She fucked those boys up.
Yeah, good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hate bullies. I got time for them. So good.
Yeah.
And what is how old was that kid? Like 17? Leave that 12-year-old boy alone. Get a life.
I get that there's like a little bit of hazing. I think that, shit, I was, in high school. I remember grade school. I remember having to deal with that stuff as a boy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I can't speak for a girl coming up and through like school and stuff, but
yeah,
I wasn't one of the popular kids. So yeah, bullying was a thing. So to me, to a degree, but they did it in more of like, they were trying to get this kid to jump into like the freezing cold water.
They're like sociopaths,
right? They were like slashing them across this was almost a step above bullying to me, where it was like
extreme.
Right. I agree. I think that these kids definitely deserve to get something coming.
I think that what happens to them was just helping anybody else that they were going to eventually turn their attention to. So it worked out for the best.
Right.
But the other scene I can't believe we didn't even talk about until just now, but it just came into my head, is the scene where she's explaining to him that she can't come in without being invited. And he's like, why? And he's like questioning, and she's like, okay, fine, I'll show you. And she like walks in the room and she just stands there, and like blood just starts coming from like everywhere. So well done. That scene is so unsettling to me. Well, I completely forgot about that scene too, but that one that's intense. And of course he's like, he cares for her. So he's like, oh my God.
Trying to like,
So, but that looked very real to me. Like
for me, that was one of the cool parts of this film that has differed from a lot of other vampire films.
Yeah.
Because it tested the lore on that. Like what happens.
What happens
Like this has been a part of the lore for forever.
Ever. Yep.
But like we've never really seen what happens if the person enters and they're not invited.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool how that they did that and put that in there. There was some other things that they did with the lore too. I'm having a hard time thinking of them right now, but it was just like I thought that was kind of cool how they played with it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, because typically with the you can't come in unless you're invited, it's almost like it creates an invisible barrier, so they just can't.
Yeah.
Like Buffy is like that. And then once you invite a vampire in, you have to like cast a spell to re-engage your protective whatever around your house. And then it just is like almost like a bubble, basically, that they literally physically cannot come in. And whereas this was like, well, I can, but let me show you what happens when I do. And I did really like that. I mean, and it's so hard too to like to change anything vampire wise because everything's just been done the same for so long. Like kind of to your point, like, you know, it's always just been, well, you can't go in unless you're invited, and that's that. You know, whereas this really pushed the boundaries on adding either deepening the lore in that situation or kind of switching it up a little bit. But no, I loved that scene. I mean, it's almost heart-wrenching to watch because I think as a viewer, you do grow to care for Ellie a lot. Like in general, you know, you feel bad for her, you feel, you know, and so that scene in particular, just like, oof, that's rough, you know, so. But yeah, practical effects, I think they did really, really well in this. The CGI cats threw me for a loop, but, you know, it is what it is.
All right. So going back to Ginger Snaps, because we are trying to put these against each other, acting and Ginger Snaps. And really, I would keep it to the like top 3 characters or actors if you'd like, you know.
Yeah, I think I think Bridget and Ginger are solid. I got no qualms there. I think the mom did a great job. The boy toy, however, a little weak of a character, but there's a part of me that feels like that's probably intentional because, you know, we didn't touch on this, but the whole premise of Ginger Snaps is coming into womanhood and this correlation or metaphor of coming into womanhood and becoming a werewolf, like becoming a monster, becoming something else, right? You can take that however you want, but that's what it's about. It's very similar to Jennifer's Body. They have shot for shot scenes that are the exact same between the two movies. They go very well together in a complementary way, not a stealing idea way. And so like they're
double
obviously
feature possibly. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
that'd be a good double feature. I was saying.
Yeah, we should have done them together.
But Jennifer's Body,
vampire. Actually, she's
like a demon or something, right?
She's like a demon, I guess. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, so I think it's like this because it's talking about that specifically, you know, the male characters are weaker. And I feel like there's a chance that's probably on purpose. But I mean, otherwise, I thought the acting was pretty on point. I didn't have any really qualms with that. Believability or emotional scenes I thought were done well. You know, nothing felt underdeveloped or anything for me.
I was really trying to look into what it was about this film that it had a hard time. I had a hard time personally relating to it. And I want to say that's probably why, though. And why it's so popular in some people's is because I have never had to deal with having a period or going through that type of, you know what I mean?
Those changes, it's different. Yeah.
And whereas Let the Right One In, I feel like I've been a boy growing up, having a crush, you know,
that makes sense.
Right. Having bullies like multiple and having to do that and feel that. I've felt this, never felt this.
Makes sense.
So for me, I feel like that's part of the reason why I'm having a hard time really relating to ginger snaps, but I do have the respect there for sure for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that. I think that's probably in part of why Let the Right One In doesn't resonate so deeply with me, because I can't, that's not, an experience that I can relate to. I had bullies, but once I hit middle school, I just started hitting them. So it just kind of took care of itself. Right. And so I never really had an issue, even in high school. It was the same way. But I really love this idea of like taking any life change, whether it's coming, whether it's that type of life change or any life change, and equating it to something with a monster lore. Or I think that's a really cool idea. And I've always thought it was really cool. So it's always resonated with me, always.
That's awesome. Yeah. For me, I hate to sound like I'm being shitty about this movie, but the acting seemed a little bit just kind of middle of the road. It felt like I was watching like a teenage show on TV at parts of the film. Like we were going into a school, and even the fights they were playing soccer, right? Or no, they were playing that stick ball game.
Yeah, and the popular girls had knocked Bridget down or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did a good job at making you hate the popular girl.
That's the easy thing to do.
And, right? It's like you hate her guts. But like it felt so every time like I've ever seen like a teen show on. Yeah. Like it kind of reminded me of that for some reason. Yeah. And it kind of just fell middle. And it sucks because you were saying that you thought the drug dealer friend was like and I want to say he's one of my favorite characters in that film.
I don't dislike his character. I just think that the standouts are the mom and then the sisters. I think were just but again, I think that's by design. I don't think it's a skill set thing. I think it's just the writing and the way that they, because of what the movie's about. So, but no, I liked him. I didn't have anything. I didn't dislike him. I just didn't think he was the strongest for me. He didn't, I don't know. He just didn't shine, I guess, as much as the others.
For sure. No. 100%. Okay. What about the acting in Let the Right One In?
Definitely probably its strongest asset. I mean, those kids, like,
whenever children can act like that and make me believe, that just blows my mind, because I don't know. I just feel like kids have so many more distractions than maybe grown-ups, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, look, something shiny. Pew.
They're also from the other thing is that kid actors really can ruin an entire film. Yes. Like they recast the son in the vampire series, The Strain, and the entire second season, every scene that new kid was in, I was like, I hate this. Like it ruined it. It ruined everything that he touched. And I feel like that happens more often, right, with child actors than it does with adult actors. But yeah, when these kids, Jesus, like they nailed this, and the adults were good too. I mean, they were good. I liked the contrast of the dad character and the mom character, and how you notice like you don't ever see the mom, like her head's always cut off. But you see the dad, you see all of like the dad, everything. Cause the dad's sitting with them. You see him when they're outside doing the snow stuff together. But yeah, I think the kids, I mean, there's these very interesting moments when Ellie is talking about the fact, that she's 12 more or less. Right. And when she's talking about these things, the way that she's talking, like her facial expressions, her tones, because she's not speaking English, so it's more about those kind of things for me as somebody who has to read what they're saying.
Agreed.
She feels older. Like there's these things about the way she portrays herself when she's talking about herself, where you can sort of feel like you're getting glimpses of just how long she's been around. And I thought that was like just chef's kiss. That was so well done, because I don't feel like especially for a child, I don't think that's an easy thing to accomplish.
Agreed. That's exactly what I was getting at, was like the way that she acted was really, really amazing when he's being like a child and she's being like an adult, because obviously she's been around for
a long time.
So long.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree on that.
Yeah.
What did you think about the storyline in Let the Right One In? Or just the story in general?
Mm-hmm. I think I like this story enough. I kind of like the idea that there's this they're both very lonely in very different ways. Oscar's surrounded by people and he's utterly alone.
Yeah.
And Ellie has nobody except the creepy familiar guy. But other than that, there isn't, she doesn't have anybody. And this idea that they're coming basically from two different worlds, right? And they're experiencing loneliness in such different extremes. And then they form this very organic connection. And I love that, it's obviously it kind of ends up being romantic, but I have a hard time labeling it that when they're 12 years old. So
yeah,
we're going to stick with mostly the friendship side of it, but it's this very interesting, she gets to him, he gets to her, and there's this really interesting mixing of the two things. And I really dug that. Because like, as I was saying before, like I love things that don't feel overly romantic or overly saturated with the love interest crap. Not that doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes it works, it's fine. But I really like diving into like other types of relationship dynamics. And with it being 12-year-old prepubescent kids, well, sort of. She didn't get to go through puberty, but anyway, but it's like it's a very interesting dynamic, and I felt for them. There's parts in it where there's things that happen and the music changes to that like soft, sad, classical sound, and you're just like, ow, like oof, and you feel for them. And so I think in that regard, the story itself was really well done.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like there was a lot said with a lot less dialogue in the film.
Agree. Yep.
And that they did a lot of showing, not telling.
Yep.
So yeah, it made for more of an engaging experience. But as far as what was it? I feel like he was developing like a crush on her, but where she was almost the motherly, caring, protective. Like that's how I saw their relationship, where she was almost like a mom to this boy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And almost like a protector. So I did see where he was coming at it this way, but she was almost more of a nurturer type of like, I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, on the flip side, I was also kind of seeing it like, oh my gosh, is this motherfucker grooming this little boy to be her next familiar that like watches as she sleeps and like goes out and gets her food and like,
oh yeah, no, 100%. That's the direction it's going in. Yeah.
So like to me, I was like, oh, this could be kind of more of a not so friendly relationship she's trying to build here. Whereas at first I'm like thinking, oh, this is kind of like, I like this. Like she cares for him. She's trying to be protective, but is it for what reasons? Because she is still a vampire. She's still like a, a monster basically. So,
well, and I think to your point, it's like, it's an interesting thing though, because then it's like, what was really going to happen for him though?
Yeah.
Like what kind of life was he really going to have? I mean, the bullies were a huge issue, right? And they got slaughtered. Well, like it's almost like where would the people who find the dead bodies look to? They're going to look at the other kids in the school. Who else was there? Because that teacher just saw that little boy in the water and suddenly he wasn't there anymore. And there's all these dead bodies. So and then, his mother is this very like, like a TV mother. She seems to act very present, but she's not actually present, which is why you never get to see her face. And then you've got the dad who is the fun dad, but there's also some darkness there too. And so it's like, what kind of life was he going to lead if he doesn't go with the one person he's connected with the most in his life? Yeah. So it's like, sure, it would suck to have to go into the woods and cut people's throats and, like deal with all that shit. Right. Mm-hmm. But what else was his life really going to be? And is it worth the sacrifice of could be when this is going to be the future? But no, she 100% is going to turn him into her next familiar. 100%.
Now, what did you think about the original familiar? Because to me,
yeah,
he kind of sucked, right? I mean, it seemed like he was like setting up his little situation where there was like a walking path where people were walking their dogs, and he got busted the first time. He got busted the second time. Yeah. When he's getting rid of the bodies, he's just like going like a couple feet away from wherever and then just dropping it off. And it's just like, dude, you're not trying at all to make any of this happen. And then he ends up giving up.
It kind of felt to me like he was just tired of it.
Yeah. I can see that.
It's like he was getting older. He's still a human, right? He's getting older and he's tired of doing it.
I could see that. To me, it felt like he was just kind of like didn't really care. It just kind of seemed
he had his backup plan, and he was like, well, if it happens, it happens. Like he just was done, I think.
Okay. So the story in Ginger Snaps, the storyline or what have you, what did you feel about that?
I love the storyline for Ginger Snaps. The sister dynamic, the having each other when they're both really weird in this school where they're obviously the outcast, and then, like I said before, the correlation between the changes of life and adding in the monster lore as the kind of metaphor for the changes and dealing with all these things and what it does to not just you, but the people you love or can do, and all that kind of stuff. I loved it. I think it's such a, it's still, like I said, very campy in part. So there's definitely some humor to it, but I think the overall story about her and Bridget is really the part that sells it for me, which is why some of those like more specific things like the transformation or the way the werewolf looks like, I can overlook a lot of it because I just found the story to be almost like heartwarming and very sad but genuine, and I really loved it.
For me, I actually really like the story also, even though I feel like it didn't really resonate for me. I feel like with a bigger budget, this could be a film that I would be like, oh my God. Yeah. This film's amazing. Give me a bipedal werewolf that's ripping through motherfuckers and have her slowly changing into that, have good transformation, have that be the, I feel like that could be a really, like if they were to remake that and make it now and have some money back in it, really spend some time with some really good, like, you know what I mean saying? Like, I feel like that will...
So this was made for $4.5 million. Okay. It only made $570,000 in the box office.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's rough. I mean, in bigger productions, right, 4.5 million would seem like not very much money, but that was their budget, and they didn't even break even. They're in the negative after this went to the box, which is crazy because I feel like now it has like a bit of a cult following. But the thing was the same way. Nobody would, that completely bombed, and then now it's like everybody's favorite movie, right? So
no.
Yeah, but it didn't even break even. It's in the negative after it got out of the box office. So that's kind of crazy. But 4.5 million to do a werewolf movie at this caliber, like as far as the high concept story, it's really just not enough money. You really do have to pick and choose where you're going to use it.
Agreed. All right. Well, what would you score Ginger Snaps out of 10?
Ginger Snaps is an 8.5.
Really? You gave it an 8.5? I was trying to do a drum roll, but then I didn't have anything to drum on. I just have a pad in front of me. Okay,
Yeah.
so you gave Ginger Snaps an 8.5 out of 10.
Yep.
And again, I know this is hard for me because I know a lot of people have this in their top 5 werewolf films. I always hear this movie being thrown around. So I gave it a 5.5.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's low.
Well, I try to put it in order of all the other werewolf films that I like, right? So if I was going to watch, God, I don't even know if this would fit in my top 10 is the problem.
Yeah.
But that's me being picky. That's like if I'm really setting out the DVDs in a line in front of me and I'm like looking at, I'm having to swap spaces and stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I would watch this before I would watch. So I think that's thinking of it like that. That's why I have it at a 5.5.
Okay.
As far as Let the Right One In, what are we going to score that out of 10?
I would give Let the Right One In probably a 6.5.
Damn. I was going to give it a 6 to 6.5. And I want to say that's mainly because of the acting. I feel like the acting is really what carried this film for me.
I agree.
There was some really cool jarring scenes. Her spinning the head around, like I said, dropping the body off, and then of course the ending finale scene. There were some really cool things that happened, but overall the acting's really what like pushed this for me, and I feel like that's what, the driving factor, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So if you had to, I think I already know how you're feeling. We're going to go ahead and say that this might be a tie.
Yeah, I was trying to do the math in my head to average out our ratings to see which one is technically rated higher, but it's only by like decimals.
Because at this point, it would be like, well, which one would I be more apt to watch? It's really a toss-up because it's like right now I'm kind of feeling like I'd probably be more likely to watch Let the Right One In before I'd watch Ginger Snaps again. But it's a toss-up. Like it's just by like this much that I would like the right one in. It's just like, so like you're saying, like it's such a small degree that I'm like above it for me.
Yeah, and for me, I probably won't revisit Let the Right One In. But I rewatch Ginger Snaps maybe once a year.
Oh wow. Okay. So it's one of your faves.
So yeah, and yeah.
All right. Is this the first time that we've not like agreed on like the winner?
Yeah.
Nice.
What do we do with that?
Like, what?
What do we do with that? We just leave it?
We just leave it up to the people. They know, some people are gonna just relate more to this movie rather than this one, right? So it's just, to me, I think it really depends on what type of movies you are more.
That's also true. These are tonally, these are very different films. That's true. That's a good point. They're completely different.
Very much so. Whereas one's a lot more campy and like almost more
a little
fun.
More light. Yeah. The other one's like doom and gloom.
Kind of, more serious and
yeah.
All right.
Well, weird.
I'm just glad that I get to pick the next werewolf film because I already have one in mind.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't sure if I wanted to tell you or not, so I was going to keep it a secret.
You can keep it a secret for a little longer.
Okay.
So it could be a surprise, and then I'll have to figure out which one. I've got some vampire ones I know I want to talk about, but it's got to be a right time, right place kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll see. If you don't beat me to them, we'll see. You know how that
I have a feeling you're already going to have a response to the one that I have chosen. So.
Okay. Well, we'll see then. Yeah. So you're going to pick the werewolf next. So, all right, cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Cursed Beings. Let us know in the comments which movie won. We don't know. We can't decide. So let us know.
I like that. Yeah. You guys tell us which one you like.
Which one won?
Right?
Which one won? Yeah.
These are both held in high regard. Like vampire fans really love Let the Right One.
Oh my God. I know.
Like they're willing to like, and it's not in my top 5 vampire films. I'm sorry, it's not.
Nope, me neither. Especially not after a rewatch.
I do respect the film. Again, acting is what pushed it up for me, but it's just not I don't even know if it's in my top 10.
I don't know.
Either of these ones. So
yeah. So let us know in the comments which one is superior, because we don't know this one. We don't know. So all right, cool. Well, as always, Albert's links will be in the description where you can find him and his content. There will also be a link to our merch. You can get cool logo that Albert made us. And so you can match us. And yeah, that's all we have for this episode. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We hope you have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.